Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Tax in 10 with me, Rachel de Souza, and Andrew Robbins. We are both tax partners in RSM's London office and have a wealth of experience in dealing with a wide range of private client matters. Your feedback is valuable to us, so do keep it coming, especially if you have thoughts on any topics you would like us to cover. Please contact us by email, and our email addresses are at the bottom of your screen.
Hello, Rachel. I thought this week it's about time we took on some of the big topics. So today I want to talk to you about death and taxes. In particular, HMRC has announced that it collected inheritance tax of £4.6 billion between April and December 2021. And that is an impressive increase of £600 million or 16% compared to the same period in 2020. So those sound like big numbers, and I thought it would be interesting to look into them a bit more to find out firstly, what's caused that increase. I mean, was it really because that many more people died in 2021?
Well, hang on a second before you get ahead of yourself. Let's look at whether 600 million is actually a big number. I mean, it would be a vast number if it was in my bank account, but I think in the Treasury's terms, the Treasury has lots more money in its bank account than 600 million. So will that make much of a difference?
Well, I thought you might ask me that. £600 million is actually about 0.1% of total UK tax receipts. So it's literally a rounding error in the government's finances. But the thing is, at the same time, the increase does mean there are UK families that are having to pay an extra £600 million in tax. And those are, potentially life-changing numbers on an individual basis.
Okay, that's true. Well, we can return to what we're going to do about that. But for now, let's think about why the tax take has gone up. One obvious answer to that is, of course, that we have sadly seen a lot more people dying. But also, a lot of it seems to be down to delays in collection. The consensus view is that the main reason for the increase is because all of the disruption caused by COVID, with lots of taxes being calculated and paid late. And so this means in turn that some tax receipts have just shifted a year. So it kind of looks like the payments went up by more than they actually really did.
I think that's definitely true. But I think the more interesting element is actually the fact that IHT receipts keep going up year on year, even though the rate of tax hasn't changed since the 1980s, and generally people are living longer. So you can't explain the trend just by timing differences or COVID, because it's a long-term thing. So to really see what's going on, we need to talk about that wonderful bit of jargon that's called fiscal drag. So Rachel, what is fiscal drag?
I mean, unlike Ant and Dec, you mean? So fiscal drag is what happens where allowances and reliefs don't rise in tandem with the rise in prices. So the first £325,000 of your estate on death is called the nil rate band. And that's because it's taxable at 0%. And this amount has not changed since 2009. So in real terms, that means the value of your nil rate band has gone down by more than £110,000 when you adjust for inflation over that period.
Yeah, so fiscal drag is a really sneaky and actually really effective way of raising more money. Because instead of increasing tax rates, you just freeze allowances, which brings more money in the door without people really noticing. That's why we end up with sort of it's just nonsense, like tax-exempt gifts from a parent to a child on marriage, which is at the princely sum of £5,000. The level of that hasn't changed since the legislation was introduced in 1984. And the marriage gift exemption would need to be increased to about £18,000 today to get back to the original buying power.
And of course, Andrew, it's only going to get worse, isn't it? We already know that the nil rate band will remain frozen at least until 2026. And when you combine that with inflation streaking ahead to levels we have not seen for a generation, the annual IHT take is likely to carry on increasing at an eye-watering speed.
Okay, so we've got a problem, and we can see that problem in the fact that tax take on IHT carries on going up. So what's the solution?
Well, there are some solutions, and actually with IHT, it's really a matter of going back to basics. So I think that when it comes to estate planning, you need to focus on the old familiar techniques.
Yeah.
And that's basically, if you can afford to give away your wealth, do so and do it as early as possible to ensure or to hope that you can survive for the 7 years. And, you know, as most people recognise, they understand this 7-year term. And what happens is then the value that's been given away is completely removed from your estate for your death. In limited cases, you can hold assets that are exempt from IHT in the first place, although, you know, that does have some downsides such as illiquidity and investment risk. And finally, one I think that's often overlooked, don't underestimate how useful life insurance can be, even if you are relatively old.
I think that's a really good point, actually, that insurance these days, it doesn't all stop at age 65, and it's really worth considering that, as well as the basics, especially that giving things away. But it all means that IHT is really an area where you just can't beat thinking ahead, and the sooner you start doing your estate planning, the more effective it's going to be.
So there you go. We have a problem, but we have a solution. And on that cheerful note, Andrew, do you have a recommendation for us this week?
I do. I'm going to be a bit cheeky on this one because you may remember a few episodes ago, I recommended the novels of Len Deighton, and ITV have just started showing the series of the Ipcress Files, and the Ipcress Files was the first Len Deighton novel, and it was the iconic 1960s sort of breakout film for Michael Caine. And the film version is just fantastic. It's black and white, British spy thing. Caine is really charismatic. The ITV TV version, of which I've seen a couple of episodes so far, Joe Cole is no Michael Caine, but it looks fantastic. It's got a real feel of the 1960s. It's a bit modern sensibilities, so they have a black actor in there, and they have a woman with a more prominent role than she would have been given back in the more misogynistic 60s. But it's really good fun. It looks amazing, and so far I would recommend that as a bit of sort of good old-fashioned escapist spy mystery TV, the Ipcress Files on ITV.
Well, that's amazing. I think for the first time ever, I'm with you because I'm also watching that.
There we go.
Anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. As always, please let us have your comments and feedback. And as a reminder, we can be contacted on rachel.d'souza@rsmuk.com and andrew.robbins@rsmuk.com. Until next time.
Bye.